This broadcast is a fictional audio drama created for entertainment purposes. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter, the Perimeter Broadcast. If you are hearing this transmission, emergency conditions are ongoing. There's a landmass 3.5 nautical miles off the Tillamook coast that was not there yesterday. It has trees on it. By the time this broadcast ends, no coordination office in this country will still be calling it a sandbar. I want to describe what people are seeing before I say anything else, because the language on this is moving faster than I can keep up with, and I would rather you hear the shape of it than the paperwork. If you are standing at the harbor mouth in Garibaldi right now, and you look due west past the last channel marker, you will see a ridge of dark green rising out of the water. It reads from shores forested. It reads as older than it should be. A woman who called in from the parking lot of the North Jetty said her kitchen window looked straight out at it over her sink, and that when she filled her kettle this morning, she thought for a moment she had driven somewhere else in her sleep. That is the kind of report we are getting. Domestic, quiet, people noticing from inside their own homes that there's a landmass on the horizon that was not there the day before. Authorities are not calling it an island. They are calling it, and I want to be careful with the wording here, an uncharted nearshore feature under active assessment. That is the phrase a regional emergency management office released at 6:12 this morning. A coastal coordination desk operating out of Astoria has separately used the phrase temporary bathymetric anomaly. Neither office has explained how a bathymetric anomaly grows trees. The County Sheriff's Marine Unit has advised all recreational and commercial vessels to remain inside the harbor until further notice. The Marine Safety Station at Garibaldi has issued a no-approach advisory extending 2 nautical miles around the feature. That advisory went out at 6:41 a.m. and was expanded to 3 nautical miles at 7:02. It is now 7:18 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 AM, and we are relaying verified information as it comes in. I should say plainly, before we go further, that I have been on this desk since 2 o'clock this morning. At 2 o'clock, there was no island. The overnight log from the Harbor Master's office, which we have on the desk in front of us, shows the standard channel readings at 2:14 a.m., the standard readings at 3:47 a.m., and then at 4:56 a.m., a note in the log that simply says obstruction, west approach, calling it in. That is the earliest reference we have found so far, 4:56 a.m. Between 3:47 and 4:56, something arrived. I need to be precise about what that means. It does not mean something surfaced. Surfacing implies a mechanism, and we do not have one. It means that in the space of roughly 1 hour, in the pre-dawn dark, a piece of land approximately, and this is a preliminary figure from the Marine Unit, approximately 1.25 miles long and roughly a half mile across, established itself in water that has been charted at 180 feet deep since the charts have existed. The Regional Emergency Management Office is asking residents to remain in their homes if they live west of Highway 101 between Rockaway Beach and Nettitz. That advisory is being described as precautionary. I am passing that along as received. It is now 7:26 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 AM. We are continuing. Verified reports from the Harbor Master's office in Garibaldi indicate that the Marine Unit made a partial approach to the feature at approximately 6:55 this morning, holding it just under 1 nautical mile off its eastern shore. The report we have, and this is being read to me from a written summary, describes a shoreline of dark rock and pebble beach, above which the ground rises at what the report calls a consistent forested slope. The trees are described as coniferous, mature, and I want to be careful with that wording, not inconsistent with a regional biome. That last phrase is doing a great deal of work, and I want to sit with it for a moment. Not inconsistent with a regional biome, meaning the trees look like our trees. Meaning if you photograph the shoreline of this feature and set the photograph next to a photograph of, say, Cape Meares, a person unfamiliar with either location would not immediately be able to tell them apart. The Marine Unit did not land. The Marine Unit was instructed not to land. The instruction, as it was relayed to us, came from a coastal coordination desk and used the phrase, no personnel to establish contact with the feature pending further assessment. That is a phrase I have not heard used about a piece of geography before. A caller from Bay City, Phoning from a landline, report says dog would not go out into the yard this morning. He said the dog stood on the porch, faced west, and would not move. I am relaying that without comment. We have had 3 other calls describing similar behavior in dogs, and one in a horse as stable off Wilson River Road. None of these are confirmed as connected. The desk is noting them. The Regional Coastal Weather Service has issued a small craft advisory citing unusual local sea state near the feature. The advisory describes water flat within the 2-mile radius and disturb at the boundary. Disturb how? The advisory does not say. It is now 7:34 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter, and I am waiting on the next coordination call, which we are told will come at the top of the hour. A caller from the Cape Mears area, phoning from a cell number at the desk, has verified against a prior call from the same address in a previous advisory cycle. Reports the following. He walked out to the bluff at first light with a pair of binoculars. He estimates he was looking at the feature from an elevation of roughly 200 feet, at a range he puts at just under 4 miles. He says the shoreline is rocky. He says there is a small bay on the north side. He says there is what he described as a stand of older trees near the center of the visible ridge, taller than the surrounding canopy, and that among those trees he believes he saw a clearing. He was careful, and I appreciate this. To say he could not be certain. He said the light was poor. He said his binoculars are 10 years old. He said he wants to be honest that he might be projecting a shape onto what is only forest. But he also said this, and I am relaying it as received. He said the clearing was rectangular. I want to be careful with that wording. Rectangular is a word we use for things people make. The caller himself hedged it. He said, roughly rectangular. He said, the sort of shape you would notice if you were looking for it. He was not claiming a structure. He was describing an outline in the trees. The desk has logged the report. We have not been able to independently verify it. We are told the Marine unit has now been redirected to make a second pass along the northern shore of the feature, and that a small fixed-wing aircraft out of the county airport has been requested to overfly at low altitude within the hour. We will relay what those passes produce. Authorities are not calling this an island. They are still calling it an uncharted nearshore feature. That language is held for the last 90 minutes, which, on a morning like this, feels like a long time. It is now 7:41 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Stay with us. I want to give you the picture as it stands. For anyone just joining, between roughly 3:47 and 4:56 this morning, a landmass approximately 1¼ miles long and half a mile wide established itself in the Pacific Ocean, 3½ nautical miles off the central Tillamook coast, in water previously charted 180 feet deep. The feature is forested. A no-approach advisory extends 3 nautical miles around it. Residents west of Highway 101 between Rockaway Beach and Nettitz are being asked to remain indoors. Officials are calling it an uncharted nearshore feature under active assessment. The new information, as of the last update, is a caller report of a possible clearing among the taller trees on the visible ridge. Unverified. Being checked. I have one additional item. The utility office in Tillamook has confirmed a brief power fluctuation along the coastal grid at 4:53 this morning, lasting approximately 11 seconds. They are describing it as a phase-inconsistency of undetermined origin. They are not connecting it to the feature. They said, and I want to quote this carefully, that they are not, at this stage, connected to the feature. The wording implies a stage at which they might. A verified report from the Marine Safety Station at Garibaldi indicates that all vessels that were at sea overnight have now returned to harbor. 2 commercial trawlers that were expected in from the Columbia Bar have been diverted north to Astoria as a precaution. 1 recreational vessel out of Pacific City has not yet checked in and is being described as overdue, but not yet a concern. That is an open item. The desk will return to it. Local hospitals report no unusual admissions overnight. The county school district has, as a precaution, delayed the start of school by 2 hours in the coastal zone. Highway 101 remains open. Traffic is described as light. It is now 7:48 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network, and we are relaying verified information as it comes in. The fixed-wing aircraft I mentioned earlier has been in the air for approximately 12 minutes. We have a preliminary observation relayed to us through the Coastal Coordination Desk from the pilot spotter. I want to give this to you exactly as it was written down and read to me. The spotter reports the feature is oriented roughly north to south. The ridge line runs the length of the island. The eastern shore, which faces us, is a pebble and cobble beach approximately 40 feet wide at low water. The western shore, on the ocean side, appears to fall off more steeply. The spotter counted, and this is the phrase used, no fewer than 4 small bays or inlets along the coastline. The spotter also confirms the clearing. I want to be careful with that wording, because the aircraft confirmation is not the same as the caller's confirmation. The aircraft is describing a break in the canopy near the center of the ridge, roughly rectangular in outline, approximately 80 feet by 50 feet. The spotter does not describe a structure. The spotter describes a clearing. The pilot has been asked to make one additional pass and then return to the county airport. They have been asked not to descend below their current altitude. That instruction, we are told, came from the Coastal Coordination Desk within the last 4 minutes. Authorities are not calling this an island. They are now calling it, and this is new language as of the last coordination call, a persistent uncharted feature. Persistent. That word replaced temporary at 7:44 a.m. I want to note that. That is the first time I have heard official language move in that direction this morning. The overdue recreational vessel out of Pacific City has still not checked in. The desk is noting that. It is now 7:56 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue after this next coordination window. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. Tillamook County Perimeter. We are continuing the perimeter broadcast. Emergency conditions remain ongoing. For anyone joining, the shortest version I can give you is this. A landmass approximately 1¼ miles long and half a mile wide is currently sitting 3½ nautical miles off the central Tillamook coast, in water previously charted at 180 feet deep. It was not there yesterday. It appeared or arrived or established itself between approximately 3:47 and 4:56 this morning. It is forested. There is a clearing near the center of its visible ridge, roughly rectangular, approximately 80 feet by 50 feet. Officials are calling it a persistent uncharted feature. A 3 nautical mile no approach advisory is in effect. Residents west of Highway 101 between Rockaway Beach and Nettitz are being asked to remain indoors. The new confirmed detail since the last update is this. The fixed-wing aircraft that overflew the feature has returned to the county airport. Its spotter has filed a written report. That report has now been transmitted to the Regional Emergency Management Office, and portions of it have been read to this desk. Among the confirmed observations, the spotter counted 7 separate clearings across the length of the ridge. Not 1, 7 of roughly comparable size, spaced. And I want to be careful with the wording here. At what appear to be regular intervals along the spine of the feature. Regular intervals. That is the phrase in the report. I am not going to characterize that phrase. I am passing along as received. It is now 8:07 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m., and we are relaying verified information. The Coastal Coordination Desk has issued a supplementary advisory. It reads, and I am reading directly from a summary handed to me. All aircraft not directly tasked to feature are to remain outside a 5 nautical mile radius at an altitude of not less than 3,000 feet until further notice. That is an expansion from the earlier 2-mile radius, and it is the first altitude restriction we have heard today. A caller from Oceanside reports the following. He walked down to the beach with his son around 7:30 this morning. He says the feature is clearly visible from the beach at low tide, framed between the 2 rock stacks off Nettitz Spit. He says the water between the shore and the feature looked, and this is his word, settled. He described the surface as flatter than the water on either side of the line running from the beach to the feature. He said the gulls were not flying over that stretch of water. He said he watched for several minutes and did not see a single gull cross the line. I want to be careful with that wording. The caller was calm. He is a former commercial fisherman. He said he has never seen the gulls do that. The overdue recreational vessel out of Pacific City has still not checked in. It is now approximately 15 hours past its expected return. The Marine Safety Station at Garibaldi is describing it as a vessel of concern. That language has changed since our last update. The desk is noting that. It is now 8:14 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. A verified report from the Marine Unit's second pass, which concluded at approximately 8:02 this morning, has been relayed to us through the Harbor Master's office. I want to give it to you carefully. The Marine Unit approached from the northeast this time, holding at approximately 0.8 of a nautical mile off the northern tip of the feature. From that position, they were able to look down the length of the western, oceanside shore for the first time. The report described the western shoreline as consistent with the eastern in composition, pebble and cobble beach, though narrower. The report described the water immediately adjacent to the feature, within roughly 100 yards of shore, as, and I want to quote this exactly, unusually clear with visibility to the bottom in what should be deep water. Visibility to the bottom in water that, on our charts, has no bottom at that range that a person could reasonably see. The report goes on. The bottom, as observed from the Marine Unit's position, is described as sloping gently upward from open ocean depths to the base of the feature. Sloping gently, not rising abruptly, the way a seamount would. Sloping, as though it belonged there. The Marine Unit did not remain in position long. Their report notes that the vessel's compass, which is a standard Marine Unit, began to read inconsistently at the point of closest approach, drifting by what the report calls several degrees, unpredictably, over the course of approximately 90 seconds. The compass returned to normal function once the vessel had withdrawn to the 1 mile line. Authorities are not calling this a magnetic anomaly. They are calling it, and I am reading, an instrumentation inconsistency of undetermined cause, under review. The desk has been asked to remind listeners that the no approach advisory is in effect and is being taken seriously. The Marine Unit is currently the only vessel authorized within the 3 mile radius, and even that authorization is now described as case by case. It is now 8:21 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. A caller from the Tillamook Air Museum area reports that his home barometer, which he says he has maintained and read every morning for 11 years, is currently reading a value he describes as flat and unmoving since roughly 5 o'clock this morning. He said the needle has not shifted in over 3 hours. He said that has never happened in the 11 years he has kept the log. I am relaying that without connecting it to anything. The desk has now received 4 separate calls describing stationary or stuck home instruments this morning, including 2 barometers, 1 weather station wind vane, and 1 analog clock in a kitchen that a caller from Nettleton Sis stopped at 4:56 a.m. and has not moved since. The clock detail is uncorroborated. I am noting it because the time matches the Harbor Master's log entry, 4:56. I want to be careful with that. For 56 is when the Harbor Master's office first logged the obstruction. It is also, according to one caller, when at least 1 household clock stopped. That is a coincidence I am not qualified to interpret. I am passing along as received. The utility office in Tillamook has now updated its earlier statement. The phase-inconsistency logged at 4:53 this morning is being described as of 8:15 as a discrete transient event whose signature does not match any known grid disturbance. That is a change of language. Earlier they said undetermined origin. Now they're saying does not match any known signature. That removes the easy explanation. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City has still not checked in. That is now approximately 16 hours overdue. The Marine Safety Station has moved from vessel concern to active search coordination underway. Search coordination. I want to note the shift. It is now 8:29 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network, and we will continue after a brief pause for the incoming coordination call. We are back. The coordination call ran slightly long. I have new material. A regional university's Marine Sciences Department, which the Coastal Coordination Desk has been in contact with since roughly 6:30 this morning, has released a preliminary written statement. I have that statement in front of me. It is 1 page. I am going to summarize it rather than read it verbatim, because portions of it use technical language that will not carry well over the air. The department confirms that, based on the aircraft photography and the Marine unit's observations, the feature is not consistent with any known form of rapid geological uplift. It is not consistent with a volcanic origin. It is not consistent with a submerged structure that has been raised by tectonic activity. It is not consistent, they say, with anything they have a mechanism for. They also say this: the vegetation visible on the feature, from the aerial photograph available to them, does not appear to be young. The trees, insofar as they can be assessed at the resolution available, appear to be mature. Some of them, they estimate cautiously, maybe decades old. I want to sit with that for a moment. The feature was not there yesterday. The trees on it appear to be decades old. Both of those statements are, at present, being treated as verified. The department's statement closes with the phrase, "no known explanation." Those exact 3 words. No known explanation. That is not language a university department releases lightly. Authorities are not calling this an unnatural feature. They are calling it, as of the last coordination call at 8:26, an uncharted persistent feature of unresolved origin. Unresolved origin. That is new language. It is now 8:36 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We are continuing. A caller from Rockaway Beach, phoning from what she described as her upstairs window, reports the following. She has been watching the feature since first light with a spotting scope her late husband used for birding. She estimates a range of just over 4 miles. She says the feature has not moved. She wants to emphasize that. She says she is aware that a landmass is not supposed to move, but she has been watching it specifically for that, and she wants to report that it is not. She also reports the following, and I want to get it to you carefully. She says that at approximately 7:52 this morning, for a period she estimates at less than 30 seconds, she saw what she described as a thin column of pale smoke or mist rising from one of the clearings near the center of the ridge. She was clear that she cannot rule out sea spray. She was clear that she cannot rule out low-lying fog. She was clear that she is an older woman with a decade-old spotting scope, but she wanted to report because she says she watched it rise, and then she watched it stop. The desk has logged the report. We have not been able to independently verify it. The fixed-wing aircraft that overflew the feature earlier was on the ground at the county airport at 7:52 and cannot corroborate. A second aircraft has been requested and is being prepared. We are told it will be airborne within the hour. Authorities are not calling this evidence of activity on the feature. They are, at present, not calling it anything. The report has been logged. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City remains overdue. The active search coordination continues. No debris, no signal, no sighting. That is the current status as of 8:33. It is now 8:44 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m., Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We will continue. The Regional Emergency Management Office has issued its 9 a.m. advisory 8 minutes early. I have the text. I want to read the operative language. The advisory states that residents of coastal Tillamook County, from the county line to the north of the Nautical River to the south, are advised to remain indoors and away from west-facing windows until further notice. That is an expansion of the earlier advisory, which applied only to residents west of Highway 101. The new advisory applies to the entire coastal strip of the county, and it adds a new clause, away from west-facing windows. I want to be careful with that wording. The advisory does not explain the clause. It does not say why. It simply asks residents to remain away from windows that face the ocean. The advisory also states that, effective immediately, all commercial and recreational maritime activity is suspended in Tillamook County waters. Not restricted. Suspended. That is the first time today I have heard that word used. Schools in the coastal zone, which have been delayed by 2 hours, are now closed for the day. Parents are being asked to keep children indoors. The Marine Safety Station has expanded the no approach advisory around the feature from 3 nautical miles to 5. The aircraft restriction remains at 5 nautical miles and 3,000 feet. A verified institutional report from the Coastal Transit Authority indicates that bus service along the Highway 101 corridor between Manzanita and Pacific City has been suspended. Pending the outcome of the current coordination cycle, freight traffic on 101 is being routed inland via Highway 6. Authorities are not, at this stage, using the word evacuation. They're using the phrase shelter in place, west-facing windows accepted. It is now 8:52 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We are continuing to relay verified information. I want to catch up on the open threads before we go into the next hour. The overdue recreational vessel out of Pacific City is now approximately 17 hours overdue. The active search is extended along the coast from Cape Kiwanda North to Cape Meares. No debris, no signal, no sighting. The vessel is described as a 24-foot cabin cruiser with 2 persons aboard. That is the first time this morning we have been given a passenger count. 2. I want to note the change in specificity. The desk is holding that thread open. The second aircraft, which was requested to overfly the feature after the caller's smoke or misreport, is now airborne. It departed the county airport at 8:47. We are told to expect its first observations within roughly 20 minutes. The utility office in Tillamook has reported a second phase inconsistency on the coastal grid at 8:41 this morning, lasting approximately 6 seconds. Shorter than the first. Same signature. They say, same signature. They cannot match to any known disturbance. They are now describing the events as recurring. I want to note that word, recurring. A caller from the Nehalem Bay area reports that his radio, an older set he uses in his workshop, has been picking up what he described as a hum, low, steady, underneath the station audio, since approximately 7:30 this morning. He says he can hear our voice fine. He says the hum is present regardless of which AM station he tunes to. He is not the first caller to describe this. He is the fourth. The desk is logging it. Our own engineering staff report that the KQWL carrier signal is, at present, clean and within normal parameters. I want to be careful with that wording. Clean and within normal parameters as of the last check, which was at 8:38. It is now 9:01 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. The second aircraft has begun its first pass. Preliminary observations are being relayed to us through the Coastal Coordination Desk. I'm going to give you what we have. The aircraft is confirming the 7 clearings. The spotter, working from a slightly higher altitude than the first aircraft due to the new restriction, describes the clearings as, and I am reading, arrayed along the ridge at intervals of approximately 600 to 700 feet, each of roughly comparable dimensions, each aligned along the ridge's north-south axis. Aligned, intervals, comparable dimensions. I want to be careful with those words. The spotter is not, at this stage, describing the clearings as artificial. The spotter is describing a pattern. Pattern is a word that can apply to many natural formations. I want to say that out loud, because I do not want to overstate the report. The spotter has also observed, and this is new, what appears to be a thin trail or path connecting the third clearing from the north to the fourth. The trail, if that is what it is described as narrow, consistent with along its visible length. And this is the spotter's phrase, cleared but not recently cleared, meaning the vegetation does not appear to have been cut, meaning the vegetation appears never to have been there. The aircraft is being asked to make a second pass along the ridge line. That instruction was relayed within the last 2 minutes. The Regional Emergency Management Office has, in response to the pattern observation, updated its language. As of 9:04, the feature is being described as an uncharted persistent feature of unresolved origin, exhibiting internal structural regularity. Internal structural regularity. That is new language. That is the first time this morning I have heard official language acknowledge structure of any kind on the feature. I want to note that shift. I want to note the hour at which it occurred. 9:04 a.m. Pacific. It is now 9:07 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We will continue. I have 3 additional items to relay before we move into the next coordination window. First, a verified report from the Coastal Utility Office indicates that the 2 phase inconsistencies logged this morning at 4:53 and 8:41 have been joined by a third at 9:02, lasting approximately 4 seconds. Shorter each time. Same unmatched signature. The utility office is now describing the pattern as regular, decreasing in duration, of unknown origin. Regular. That word again. The desk is holding this thread open. Second, our own engineering staff, on their own initiative, have run a check of the KQWL 1620 AM carrier signal against a reference tone. The check completed at 9:05. I want to give you the result exactly as it was described to me. The carrier is stable. The reference tone matches. But there's a secondary, very low amplitude component riding on the carrier that engineering does not have an explanation for. It is described as being at the lower end of audibility. Not enough to affect the broadcast. Not enough that most listeners would hear it. But it is present, and it was not present at 8:38. I want to be careful with that wording. Present at 9:05. Not present at 8:38. Something appeared on the carrier of this station in the last half hour. Third, the Marine Safety Station has updated the status of the overdue vessel out of Pacific City. As of 9:06, the vessel is being described as lost at sea, presumed. The 2 persons aboard are being described as missing. The search will continue. I am relaying that as received. The desk will not be closing this thread. It is now 9:14 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue after this next coordination call. The coordination call at 9:15 has produced new language, and I want to give it to you before anything else. The Regional Emergency Management Office, in coordination with the Coastal Coordination Desk and with input from the University Marine Sciences Department, is now describing the feature as, and I am reading directly, a persistent uncharted landform of unresolved origin, displaying internal regularities not attributable to known natural formation processes. Not attributable to known natural formation processes. I want to sit with that. Earlier this morning the language was temporary bathymetric anomaly, then persistent uncharted feature, then unresolved origin, then internal structural regularity. Now at 9:16, not attributable to known natural formation processes. That is 5 distinct shifts of official language in under 3 hours. Each one has moved in the same direction. Each one has removed a possibility. What is left after those 5 shifts is a piece of land, forested, structured, off our coast that we cannot explain. Authorities are not calling this artificial. I want to be clear about that. They are not using that word. They are removing the word natural from around it, but they are not yet replacing it with anything. The desk will be here when they do. It is now 9:21 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter. We are continuing to relay verified information as it comes in, and we will remain on air. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network, Tillamook County Perimeter. The perimeter broadcast is continuing. Emergency conditions remain ongoing. For those joining now, a landmass, approximately 1¼ miles long and half a mile wide, is currently sitting 3½ nautical miles off the central Tillamook coast, in water previously charted at 180 feet deep. It appeared between 3:47 and 4:56 this morning. Aerial observation has confirmed 7 clearings arrayed along the ridge line at regular intervals, connected in at least one place by what appears to be a path. The clearings and the path have been described by the coordination desk as not attributable to known natural formation processes. A recreational vessel out of Pacific City with 2 persons aboard is missing. A 5 nautical mile no approach advisory is in effect. Coastal Tillamook County is under a shelter-in-place order with a specific instruction to remain away from west-facing windows. The new confirmed detail since the last update is this: the second aircraft has completed its second pass and has been recalled to the county airport. The spotter's second observation report identifies, in addition to the 7 clearings and the connecting path, what the report describes as a further, larger break in the canopy at the southern end of the ridge, oval in outline, approximately 200 feet on its long axis, 200 feet, oval at the southern end. The spotter's report does not characterize the larger break. The report simply logs it. The coordination desk has asked that the second aircraft photography be transmitted to University Marine Sciences Department for review before any further statement is issued. It is now 9:29 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. A caller from Neditz, phoning from a landline he identified as belonging to the volunteer fire station on the spit, reports the following. He and two other volunteers walked out to the end of the spit at approximately 9 o'clock this morning. From the end of the spit, the feature is visible across roughly 3.5 miles of open water. The caller reports the water between the spit and the feature is, in his words, wrong. He described it as too still. He said the swell that normally rolls into that channel has flattened, and that the flattening is confined to a corridor that runs from the spit directly to the feature. He was careful to say he is not a scientist. He said he has walked that spit most mornings for 31 years. He said he knows what the water looks like there. He said the water does not look like that today. He also reported, and I want to be careful with the wording, that while he was standing there, he felt a low vibration through the soles of his boots. He said it was not continuous. He said it came in what he described as pulses, spaced several seconds apart, each lasting less than a second. He said the other two volunteers felt it as well. All three of them are experienced. None of them, he said, wanted to stay. The desk is logging that report. The University Marine Sciences Department has been asked whether any seismic instrumentation is currently recording activity in the area. We are told that inquiry has been made. We are waiting on a response. It is now 9:36 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. The University Marine Sciences Department has issued a follow-up statement, transmitted to the coordination desk at 9:38. I have the operative language. The statement confirms that a regional seismic monitoring array, which includes stations along the northern Oregon coast, has been recording low-amplitude ground motion in the coastal zone since approximately 4:52 this morning. The motion is described as regular, of consistent period, and not consistent with known tectonic activity. The period, the statement notes, is approximately 4.5 seconds between events. 4.5 seconds. That is close to what the volunteer at the netted spit described feeling through his boots. The statement also notes, and this is a sentence I want to give you carefully, that the amplitude of the motion has increased gradually and steadily over the last 5 hours. It is still low. It is still, they emphasize, well below any threshold at which structures would be affected, but it is not decreasing. It is not oscillating. It is increasing. The statement closes with the phrase, source undetermined, but the source appears to be co-located with the feature. Co-located. That is the word. The motion is coming from where the feature is. Authorities are not calling this activity. They are not using that word. They're using the phrase co-located seismic signal of undetermined character. I want to note the language. The language is being chosen very carefully. A verified report from the Coastal Utility Office indicates that a fourth phase inconsistency was logged at 9:33, lasting approximately 3 seconds. Same signature. Shorter again. The Utility Office has now committed, in writing, that the phase inconsistencies are phase-locked to the co-located seismic signal. Phase-locked, meaning they are occurring in step with it, meaning the same rhythm is present in the ground and on the coastal grid. It is now 9:44 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m., Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We will continue. I have been asked by our own engineering staff to relay the following. The secondary low-amplitude component that appeared on the KQWL carrier at approximately 9:05 this morning is still present. Engineering has been able to characterize it more precisely in the intervening hour. The component is a pulse signal. The pulses are spaced approximately 4.5 seconds apart. 4.5 seconds. I want to be careful with that. The pulses on our carrier are occurring at the same interval as the seismic signal from the feature. Engineering has not yet stated, in writing, that these are the same signal. Engineering has stated, in writing, that they are unable to distinguish them by period. The KQWL 1620 AM carrier is stable. The broadcast is not affected. Listeners are not, at this time, likely to hear the pulses, but they are on our carrier. They arrived on our carrier during the same window in which the coordination desk's language shifted from unresolved origin to not attributable to known natural formation processes. I am relaying that without commentary. The desk is noting the correlation. A caller from Bay City reports that the pulse hum other callers described earlier this morning has, in her words, gotten louder over the past hour. She said it is now audible in rooms where she previously could not hear it. She said her dog will still not go out into the yard. She said the dog is now lying by the front door, facing east, away from the ocean. I am relaying that as received. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City remains missing. No update. The active search has been extended offshore. It is now 9:52 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. Reports are converging from outside Tillamook County. I want to give these carefully, because their significance depends on the pattern rather than on any single item. A regional maritime coordination office in Astoria has, within the last 20 minutes, released a statement confirming that a similar uncharted feature has been observed off the Washington coast, approximately 4 miles southwest of the mouth of the Columbia River. The Washington feature is described as smaller than ours, approximately half a mile long. Forested, its shoreline configuration is described as structurally comparable to the Tillamook feature. The Washington feature was first logged at 6:12 a.m. Pacific. A separate statement from a coastal management office in Northern California describes an uncharted persistent landform observed at approximately 7:30 a.m. off the Mendocino coast. Also forested. Also what the statement describes as canopy irregularities consistent with the feature reported to our north. I want to be careful with that wording. The California statement is explicitly referencing our feature, meaning coordination between agencies has already established that these are, in some sense, the same phenomenon, meaning what appeared off Tillamook this morning has also appeared off Washington and off California. 3 features, 3 coastlines. Same morning, the Regional Emergency Management Office has confirmed in a brief supplementary release that it is now in active coordination with West Coast partner agencies. That is new language. That phrase was not used at 9 o'clock. Authorities are still not calling this artificial. They are still not calling it an event. They are calling it, as of 9:56, a regional pattern of uncharted persistent features of unresolved origin. Regional. That word replaced local at some point in the last hour, and I want to acknowledge that I did not catch the exact moment. The desk apologizes for that. The pace of the language is beginning to outrun our ability to log each shift. It is now 9:59 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. I have additional confirmations. I am going to give them in the order in which they were relayed to us. A National Fisheries Coordination Desk has confirmed at 10:02 that a 4th uncharted feature has been observed off the coast of British Columbia, approximately 5 miles west of the entrance to Barkley Sound, Vancouver Island's outer coast. Forested, first logged at 5:47 a.m. Pacific. A coastal management authority in Baja, California has confirmed at 10:07 a 5th feature approximately 3 miles off the Pacific coast south of Ensenada, smaller than the others. Forested, first logged at 8:15 a.m. Pacific. At 10:11, the coordination desk read to us the following. Reports of comparable features have now been received from the western coast of Chile, southern Australia, western Ireland, southwestern Norway, the Sea of Japan, and the coast of northeastern New Zealand. These reports are described as in the process of verification. The coordination desk emphasized that none of these has yet been independently confirmed by this network, but also emphasized that the reports are, in its phrase, geographically distributed in a manner not consistent with a localized phenomenon. Not consistent with a localized phenomenon. I want to sit with that. This morning at 7:18, we had 1 landmass off our coast. It is now at 10:14 being described as one instance of a global pattern. The window of that transition is under 3 hours. A regional broadcaster, whom we normally coordinate with on multi-agency releases, has independently confirmed the British Columbia and Baja, California features from its own sources. We are cross-checking. So far the cross-checks are matching. Authorities are not, at this stage, using the word event. They're using the phrase distributed simultaneous appearance. Distributed simultaneous appearance. That is language I have not heard used before in any bulletin cycle I have worked on this desk. It is now 10:17 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. I want to catch up on the open threads. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City remains missing. The active search has narrowed based on tide and drift analysis. The search is now concentrated in a corridor that runs from Cape KQWL west, roughly along the same line that the volunteer at the netted spit described the flattened water as running. I want to note that the desk is holding this thread open. The pulse component on the KQWL 1620 AM carrier remains present. Engineering reports the amplitude has increased slightly since 9:44. Slightly. It is still below the level at which most listeners would notice. The pulse interval remains 4.5 seconds. The pulses have not stopped. The seismic amplitude at the coastal array remains gradually increasing. Same period. Same source location. The phase inconsistencies on the coastal utility grid have not recurred since 9:33. That is the longest gap since they began. The utility office is not describing this as an improvement. The utility office is describing it as a change in the pattern. That is the phrase in their most recent statement. A change in the pattern. The 7 clearings on the feature remain 7. The larger oval break of the southern end remains. At the resolution of our aerial photography, unchanged. A caller from Tillamook, phoning from a landline in the downtown area approximately 5 miles inland, reports that his dog will now not go out into any yard at any door of his house. Earlier this morning, the dog would not go out the west door. Now the dog will not go out the south door, or the east door, or the north door. The dog is described as remaining in an interior room. I am relaying that without connecting it to anything. The desk is noting it. It is now 10:26 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m., Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We will continue after this next coordination window. We are back. I have new material. The coordination desk at 10:31 has issued the following restrictive advisory. All coastal residents in Tillamook County are advised, and I am reading, to remain indoors, to remain away from all windows facing west or south, and to reduce non-essential use of electrical devices in home. Non-essential use of electrical devices. That is a new instruction. It has not been explained. I am passing it along as received. Additionally, the advisory notes that residents should be aware of a low audible tone that may be present on some radio and household electronic devices, and states, in its phrasing, that this tone is being monitored, is not currently believed to constitute a health concern, and does not require action from residents at this time. Not currently believed. That is careful language. That phrase leaves room for a later belief. I want to say plainly that the low audible tone the advisory is referencing is, in all likelihood, the same pulse component that appeared on our own carrier at 9:05 this morning. The advisory does not name the KQWL carrier, but the description matches. Our engineering staff have been asked to comment. Their comment, as relayed to me, is that they will continue to broadcast and that they have no basis at this time to take the station off the air. I want to note something. This is the first advisory in which the coordination desk has acknowledged an effect on the broadcast environment. Not on the ocean, not on the feature, on the air that carries these words to you. That is a threshold I want to mark. The phenomenon has, in the language of the coordination desk, moved inside the signal. It is now 10:38 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We are continuing. I have a further item, and I want to be careful in how I give it to you. At 10:34, the second aircraft, which had returned to County Airport, was requested to be prepared for a third pass. That request was withdrawn at 10:41. It was withdrawn because a preliminary analysis of the second aircraft photography, completed by the University Marine Sciences Department in the intervening hour, has produced a finding that the coordination desk has chosen to release before authorizing further overflights. I have the finding. I am going to give it to you. The photography of the larger oval break at the southern end of the ridge, when analyzed at higher resolution, shows what the department describes as a regular concentric arrangement of clearings or depressions within the oval, consisting of 3 approximately equally spaced rings around a central point. Concentric rings, 3 of them, around the center. The department is not calling this a structure. The department is calling it, and I am reading, a geometric regularity of a kind not observed in natural forest canopies. That is the sentence. That is what has caused the third overflight to be withheld. Authorities are as of 10:43, describing the feature as a persistent uncharted landform of unresolved origin, displaying internal geometric regularities inconsistent with known natural formation processes. Geometric, that word entered the official language at 10:43. I want to be honest with you. I have been on this desk for a long time this morning. I have watched the language move from temporary bathymetric anomaly to geometric regularities over the course of a single shift. Each shift has been small. Each shift has been careful. None of them has moved backward. It is now 10:47 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m., Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network, and we will continue. I have a report from our own engineering staff that I want to give you before we go into the next coordination window. At 10:44, during a routine check of the KQWL 1620 a.m. transmitter, engineering observed that the pulse interval on the secondary carrier component shifted, briefly. For a period they estimate at approximately 11 seconds. During those 11 seconds, the interval between pulses shortened from 4.5 seconds to approximately 3.5 seconds. Then it returned to 4.5. The seismic array's coastal stations, we have since been told, logged a corresponding shift over the same 11-second window, from 4.5 seconds between events to 3.5. Then back, meaning the ground and the signal changed rhythm together for 11 seconds and then resumed, meaning whatever is producing the rhythm is capable of changing it, meaning it is not a passive resonance. The department has not, in writing, said adjusted. The department has said in writing, the co-located source exhibited a transient period modulation. Period modulation. The rhythm changed, briefly, and then it went back. Authorities are not, as of 10:52, using the word active. They are using the phrase, the source is exhibiting non-static behavior. Non-static behavior. I want to note that shift. The desk is holding many threads open. The vessel out of Pacific City. The pulses on our carrier. The seismic amplitude, still slowly increasing. The concentric rings at the southern end of the ridge. The features on other coasts. It is now 10:56 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. I have a further engineering item at 11:02. Our engineering staff, in coordination with University Radio Science Laboratory that has been monitoring the pulse component on our carrier since roughly 10 a.m., report a second transient period modulation, beginning at 11 hours and 14 seconds Pacific, and lasting a period they now estimate at approximately 22 seconds. During that window, the pulse interval shortened from 4.5 seconds to approximately 2 and 8/10 seconds. 22 seconds, not 11, longer than the first. The seismic array logged the same shift over the same window at the same amplitude ratio. Ground and carrier moved together. At the end of the 22 seconds, the pulse interval did not return to 4.5 seconds. It stabilized at approximately 4 and 1/10 seconds. For point 1, the interval is held at 4.1 since 11 hours and 36 seconds and is holding as I speak. I want to be careful with that. I want to be very careful. The first period modulation at 10:44 returned to baseline. The second modulation at 11 o'clock did not. The rhythm changed and stayed changed. Authorities are as of 11:04, describing the source as exhibiting sustained non-static behavior with a revised operating period. Revised operating period. That phrase has not been used before this morning. It is now 11:06 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. A verified institutional report from the Coastal Transit Authority indicates that manual traffic signal operation has been implemented at 3 intersections along Highway 101 in the coastal zone. Following what the report describes as intermittent control system inconsistencies, phase lock to the co-located seismic signal. Manual operation. That means uniformed personnel standing at intersections directing traffic by hand. That is being done. That is the current operating posture on Highway 101 to the coastal strip. The utility office in Tillamook has updated its statement. As of 11:08, the coastal electrical grid is being operated in what the office describes as reduced load protective posture. Non-essential circuits have been de-energized. Residential service remains available. Industrial service to the coastal zone has been reduced by approximately 40%. The office is not describing this as a precaution against damage. The office is describing it as a precaution against, and I am reading, further coupling between the grid and the co-located signal. Coupling. I want to note that word. The concern is no longer that the signal will damage the grid. The concern is that the grid will begin to move with the signal. A caller from Wheeler reports that the low audible tone in her home has, in the past hour, become audible without any electronic device switched on. She said she turned everything off. She said she can still hear it. She said it is not loud. She said it is present. I am relaying that as received. She is the 9th caller to describe this since 10 a.m. It is now 11:12 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. I want to relay something that has just happened on this desk. I am going to give it plainly. At 11:13, we lost contact with the Marine unit. The Marine unit had been maintaining a station-keeping position at approximately 1¼ nautical miles off the eastern shore of the feature for the case-by-case authorization we referenced earlier. That contact was on a dedicated coordination channel. At 11 hours, 13 minutes, and 22 seconds, for the timestamp on our own logging system, the channel went silent. Not a break, not a drop word, a clean cessation. The Harbor Master's office attempted to reestablish contact on the primary channel and on 2 backup channels. All 3 returned no response. The Marine unit's automated position beacon, which is on a separate system, continued to transmit position throughout. The vessel did not move. It did not drift. It maintained its station. I want to be careful with what I am about to say. For a period of 6 minutes and 18 seconds, from 11 hours, 13 minutes, and 22 seconds to 11 hours, 19 minutes, and 40 seconds, the Marine unit was in position. Its beacon was reporting normally, and no personnel aboard responded on any voice channel. At 11 hours, 19 minutes, and 40 seconds, the Marine unit came back on the primary channel. The transmission was routine. The transmission was, for the log summary read to me, confirming continued station keeping, requesting instruction on rotation schedule. No reference to the 6-minute silence. No reference to a communications fault on their end. The Harbor Master's office asked the Marine unit to confirm the interval during which they had been off-channel. The Marine unit's response, as relayed to me, was that they had not been off-channel, that from their side of the exchange, the channel had been continuous, that they had been talking and had received no responses, and had assumed the Harbor Master's office was the one experiencing the fault. I want to sit with that. From a Harbor Master's side, the Marine unit went silent for 6 minutes and 18 seconds. From Marine unit's side, the Harbor Master went silent for the same interval. Both sides report the same missing conversation from the other end. Engineering has been asked to check our own logs. Engineering reports that during the same 6-minute 18-second window, the pulse component on the KQWL carrier increased in amplitude by a factor of approximately 2, and then returned to its previous level. That amplitude excursion is on our tapes. Authorities are not, as of 11:22, characterizing the Marine unit event. They're logging it as a coordination channel discontinuity of undetermined cause, coincident with a carrier amplitude excursion of undetermined cause. 2 undetermined causes coincident. That is the language. The Marine unit has been ordered to withdraw to the harbor. That order was issued at 11:21 and acknowledged at 11:22. The vessel is moving. It is now 11:24 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. I want to note the current status of the open threads before the next coordination window. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City remains missing. The active search has, at 11:19, been downgraded to what is described as monitoring posture, pending further information. Monitoring posture is not termination, but it is not active search either. The 2 persons aboard remain listed as missing. The desk will continue to hold this thread. The seismic amplitude at the coastal array remains gradually increasing. The period is now holding at 4.1 seconds. The revised operating period, the pulse component on the KQWL 1620 AM carrier remains present. Engineering reports the amplitude is now what they describe as clearly audible on studio monitors. not yet clearly audible on consumer receivers, meaning we can hear it in the booth, meaning most listeners cannot yet. I want to say something about that. I have been hearing it since roughly 10:15. It is a pulse. It is soft. It is regular. It sits underneath my own voice as I speak. I have not mentioned it because I did not want to draw attention to something most listeners could not verify. Engineering has now confirmed it is on the carrier at a level that is beginning to be audible on standard equipment. I am mentioning it because you may begin to hear in the next hour, and I would rather you hear from the desk first than notice it and wonder whether something is wrong with your radio. Nothing is wrong with your radio. It is now 11:31 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We will continue. I have a new item from the University Marine Sciences Department. It is short. I want to give it to you carefully. At 11:33, the department released a one-paragraph statement noting that photographic analysis of the concentric rings at the southern end of the Tillamook feature, cross-referenced with photographs of the equivalent southern end formation on the Vancouver Island feature and the Baja California feature, indicates that the internal geometric arrangements are consistent across features. Consistent, meaning the rings are the same, meaning what is at the south end of our island is at the south end of theirs, meaning the features are not merely of the same type, they are the same design. The statement closes with a sentence. No known natural process produces geometric consistency of the specificity across geographically independent instances. No known natural process. That is now the second time that department has used the phrase no known in a written statement today. The first was at 8:36. No known explanation. The second at 11:33. No known natural process. I want to note the accumulation of that phrase in the record. Authorities are not, as of 11:34, using the word artificial. They're using the phrase, the features are being treated, for operational purposes, as objects of unresolved origin whose internal structure appears to be the same object repeated. The same object repeated. That is the phrase. That is what the coordination desk is now saying in writing about what is off our coast. It is now 11:36 a.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. I have a further item that requires care. At 11:37, our desk received, via the Cross Network wire we use for multi-agency releases, a report attributed to a national broadcaster's West Coast Bureau. The report, as we received it, stated that the Tillamook feature had diminished in visible extent over the past hour and cited an unnamed source at a coastal observation post. The report further stated that similar diminishment had been observed at the Mendocino feature and the Barkley Sound feature. I won't be plain about what this report said. It said the islands were getting smaller. The desk did not read that report on air at 11:37. The desk contacted the coordination desk and the harbor master's office for verification. That is standard practice, and I want to note that we followed it. At 11:44, the harbor master's office responded. The Marine unit's most recent position data, taken during withdrawal, and the shore base observation from Cape Meares and the netted spit, indicate that the Tillamook feature has not changed in visible extent. The ridge line is at the same length. The eastern shore is at the same waterline. No diminishment has been observed from our side. At 11:48, the coordination desk released a supplementary statement noting that no partner agency along the Western Coordination Corridor had confirmed any diminishment of any feature. The statement further noted that the coordination desk had contacted the national broadcaster whose report had been circulated, and that the broadcaster had, within the last several minutes, retracted the report. The retraction cited an error in source verification. I want to be careful with that. A wire report circulated for 11 minutes, claiming the islands were getting smaller. The report was retracted during those 11 minutes. We did not read it on air. The desk is noting the report, the interval, and the retraction in that order. Authorities are, as of 11:50, describing the incident as a media report of unverified content, corrected within the standard verification window. Corrected. That is the operative word. The report was corrected, but the desk is noting that the direction of the error was toward reassurance. The report said the phenomenon was receding. The correction said it was not. It is now 11:52 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We are continuing. I am now going to give you what may be, for this shift, the most significant single item of the morning. I want to give it carefully. At 11:54, our own engineering staff, in coordination with the University Radio Science Laboratory that has been listening to the pulse component on our carrier since roughly 10 a.m., release a joint preliminary characterization. The pulse component is not random. The pulse structure over the observation window from 10 a.m. to 11:45 a.m. has been analyzed and found to contain what the joint statement describes as internal substructure of consistent form across pulses, meaning each pulse is the same as the last, meaning the pulses are copies of one another, meaning the pulses carry, in the language of the statement, a repeated pattern. The statement is explicit that no meaning has been assigned to the pattern. The statement is explicit that the term signal is being used in its technical sense and does not, at this stage, imply intent. The statement is careful. I want to honor how careful it is. But I want to also give you the sentence exactly as it closes. It reads, "The pulses are structured. Their structure repeats. Their source is co-located with the Tillamook feature. Structured, repeats, co-located." Authorities are not, as of 11:57, using the word transmission. They're using the phrase, "a structured periodic emission of unresolved origin." I want to note that language, and I want to note that the desk is holding no further comment on it. We are relaying what has been released. We are not going further. The pulse component on the KQWL 1620 AM carrier is now at a level that engineering reports will be audible to most listeners on most receivers within the next 30 to 60 minutes. It is now 11:59 a.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. At 12 o'clock noon, the coordination desk convened its regular briefing cycle. That briefing produced the following, which I am reading in the order was released. First, the number of confirmed features globally has been updated to 23. Confirmed for additional features since 11:02 off the coast of southern Chile, western Ireland, southwestern Norway, and northeastern New Zealand. Each of the four had been in the previously unverified list. Each has now been independently confirmed. The coordination desk is describing the global distribution as complete along ocean-facing continental margins outside polar latitudes. Complete, that is the word. Second, the shelter-in-place order for coastal Tillamook County is being extended without a scheduled review time until further notice. The 6 p.m. review that was announced earlier this morning has been withdrawn. The advisory is now open-ended. Third, the coordination desk has issued, for the first time this morning, guidance to inland residents of Tillamook, Clatsop, Lincoln, and Yamhill counties. Inland residents are advised to remain indoors during nighttime hours as a precaution against ambient acoustic exposure. Ambient acoustic exposure. I want to be careful with that phrase. It refers, in its plain sense, to the tone. The tone that began in coastal homes this morning is now, for the coordination desk's guidance, expected to be perceptible inland by nightfall. Fourth, the coordination desk has announced that its own operational language is being formally revised. As of 12:07, the features are no longer being described as of unresolved origin. They are being described as of unresolved origin, treated as persistent. Treated as persistent. That is the operative language. That is the standing description. It is now 12:11 p.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We are continuing. I want to catch up on the threads for what may be, given the current pace of language change. The last time in the cycle I am able to do so cleanly. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City remains missing. The monitoring posture remains in effect. 2 persons remain listed as missing. The desk will continue to hold this thread open, but I want to be honest that, given the coordination desk shift to standing language, it is not clear at what point, if any, active search will resume. I am noting that the seismic amplitude at the coastal array continues to gradually increase. The period is holding at 4.1 seconds. The pulse component on the KQWL 1620 AM carrier is now, per engineering's most recent check at 12:14, audible on standard consumer receivers at low volume. Listeners in coastal Tillamook County who are tuned to the station may now hear a soft, regular pulse underneath my voice. That pulse is not part of our broadcast. It is on the carrier. It is not something we can remove without going off the air. We are not going off the air. The 7 clearings on the feature remain 7. The 3 concentric rings at the southern end remain 3. The path between the 3rd and 4th clearings from the north remains visible in the aerial photography. No further overflights have been authorized. The coordination desk has indicated that no further overflights are currently anticipated. It is now 12:19 p.m. This is KQWL 1620 AM. We will continue. The coordination desk has released what is being described as a standing operational language for the current condition. This is a language that will be used going forward until the coordination desk indicates otherwise. I am going to read it in full because it is the closest thing to a summary of this morning that will exist in the record. The coastal condition as of 12:23 p.m. Pacific is characterized as follows. A distributed set of persistent, uncharted landforms of unresolved origin, displaying internal geometric regularities consistent across independent instances, is present along ocean-facing continental margins outside polar latitudes. A co-located periodic emission of structured internal form is present in the vicinity of each landform and is coupled at low amplitude to regional infrastructure, including the electrical grid and portions of the radio spectrum. No known natural process accounts for the appearance, distribution, or internal structure of the landforms. No mechanism is available to remove them. Operational planning is to proceed on the assumption that the landforms and the emission will remain present indefinitely. Restrictive advisories are to remain in force. Coordination is continuing. That is the standing language. I have read it in full because I want you to have it. I want you to have it because I do not know what language will replace it or when. Authorities are not calling this permanent. Authorities are calling it indefinite. The distinction is small. The distinction may not survive the afternoon. It is now 12:29 p.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network. At 12:31, the coordination desk released a supplementary bulletin. I have it in front of me. The bulletin adds one item to the standing language. The item reads, and I am quoting exactly, the co-located periodic emission is, as of 12:28, characterized as stable at full intensity. Stable at full intensity. That phrase has entered the record. I want to be careful with that. Stable at full intensity does not mean strong. It does not mean loud. It means the amplitude has ceased increasing. It means the signal has reached whatever level it was going to reach and is now holding there. The gradual increase in seismic amplitude that has been logged throughout this morning has, for the coordination desk's most recent read, ceased. The pulse on our own carrier, per engineering's read at 12:30, has ceased increasing. The tone in coastal homes per callers is no longer described as getting louder. Everything is where it is going to be. That is what stable at full intensity means. It is now 12:34 p.m. This is KQWL 1620 AM. We will continue. A verified institutional report from the Coastal Utility Office at 12:38 indicates that the coastal electrical grid, in its reduced load protective posture, is now operating with what the office describes as steady-state coupling to the co-located signal at low amplitude. Steady-state coupling, meaning the grid and the signal are, at present, moving together in a stable relationship. The office is not describing this as a fault condition. The office is describing it as, and I am reading, an operating condition of indefinite duration. Operating condition. The coupling has been reclassified from a disturbance to a baseline. A verified institutional report from the Coastal Transit Authority at 12:41 indicates that manual traffic signal operation on Highway 101 will remain in effect until further notice, and that additional personnel have been requested to cover overnight hours. The Transit Authority is describing the current posture as the operating posture for the corridor, not a temporary measure. The operating posture. A caller from Manzanita reports that she can hear the tone in her home clearly now. She said it is not louder than it was 30 minutes ago. She said it is at the same level. She said she can no longer remember what her house sounded like before it was there. I am relaying that as received. She is the 14th caller to describe this since 10 a.m. She is the first to describe it in those terms. It is now 12:46 p.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. The coordination desk has released a further item at 12:49. The item concerns the observation posture going forward. The desk is announcing that, effective immediately, the Marine unit will not be redeployed to the vicinity of the feature. Shore-based observation from Cape Meares and the netted spit will continue. Aerial observation is suspended indefinitely. The desk is describing the shift as a transition from active observation to standing observation. Standing observation, meaning we watch what we can see from shore, meaning we do not approach it further. I want to note that this morning began with a Marine unit making a partial approach at just under 1 nautical mile. It is now 5.5 hours later, an established operating posture that no vessel and no aircraft will approach the feature at all. The no approach advisory around the feature remains at 7 nautical miles. The aircraft restriction remains at 7 miles laterally and 5,000 feet vertically. Both are now described as standing restrictions. Standing. The word is being applied consistently across the current bulletins. It is now 12:53 p.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Cole Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We will continue. The next coordination call is scheduled for 1 p.m. Pacific. That call has now been described in a supplementary release as the first of the standing coordination cycle. Standing coordination cycle, meaning what has been an emergency briefing cycle this morning, is being reclassified at 1 p.m. as the ongoing baseline, meaning there is no return, planned or expected, to the pre-4:56 posture. I want to say plainly what that means, without characterizing it. The coordination desk is no longer treating this morning as an incident with an end. The coordination desk is treating it as a new operating condition with a start. The 1 p.m. call is being convened now. We are told the operative language coming out of that call will not differ materially from the standing language released at 12:23. We are told that this desk will be given the role of standing bulletins on a fixed schedule going forward. The first of those bulletins is expected at 1:15 p.m. It is now 12:58 p.m. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. We will continue. The 1 p.m. coordination call has closed. The operative language, as expected, has not materially changed. The features remain in the standing description. Persistent uncharted landforms of unresolved origin, displaying internal geometric regularities consistent across independent instances. The co-located periodic emission remains in the standing description, stable at full intensity. The condition remains in the standing description of indefinite duration. I want to note one addition. The call closed with a new sentence appended to the standing language. The sentence reads, "The condition is not expected to alter within the current operational horizon." Not expected to alter. Current operational horizon. The operational horizon, per a footnote read to me from the summary, is defined as the interval over which coordination planning is currently structured. That interval is not specified in the bulletin. When our desk requested clarification, the response was that the interval is the interval over which planning is currently structured, and that further specification was not available, meaning the condition is expected to hold. For how long? The coordination desk is not saying. For as long as the coordination desk is planning around, which is the same as saying for the duration. It is now 1:04 p.m. Pacific. This is KQWL 1620 a.m. Shore-based observation from Cape Meares, relayed to us to the Harbor Master's office at 1:06, confirms that the feature is unchanged in visible extent, ridge line the same length, eastern shore at the same waterline, 7 clearings visible, the southern oval visible, no smoke, no mist, no motion. The pulse component on our carrier remains at its stable level. Engineering reports no further period modulations since 11 o'clock. The revised operating period of 4.1 seconds is holding. The seismic array reports the same, 4.1 seconds. Amplitude stable. The coastal utility grid remains in reduced load protective posture. Steady state coupling to the signal at low amplitude, holding. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City remains missing. 2 persons remain listed as missing. The monitoring posture remains in effect. The desk continues to hold this thread open, with the noted caveat that no schedule for resumption of active search has been announced. It is now 1:11 p.m. This is KQWL 1620 AM. The first bulletin of the standing coordination cycle is expected at 1:15. Before that bulletin, I want to give the picture as it stands. For anyone joining now, one final time in this segment, a forested landmass, approximately 1¼ miles long, established itself between 347 and 456 this morning, 3½ nautical miles off the central Tillamook coast, in water previously charted at 180 feet deep. It is one of 23 confirmed features of the same kind, distributed along ocean-facing continental margins worldwide. The features display internal geometric regularities consistent across independent instances, including 7 evenly spaced clearings and 3 concentric rings, arranged identically from feature to feature. A co-located periodic emission at a stable period of 4.1 seconds is present in the vicinity of each feature and is coupled to regional electrical grids and to portions of the radio spectrum, including the carrier of the station. The emission is characterized as stable at full intensity. The condition is characterized as of indefinite duration. The condition is not expected to alter within the current operational horizon. The shelter-in-place order for coastal Tillamook County remains in effect until further notice. The no approach advisory around the feature is standing at 7 nautical miles. The aircraft restriction is standing at 7 miles laterally and 5,000 feet vertically. Marine traffic remains suspended. Non-essential use of electrical devices remains discouraged. Residents are advised to remain away from west-facing and south-facing windows. Inland residents are advised to remain indoors during nighttime hours as a precaution against ambient acoustic exposure. The overdue vessel out of Pacific City remains missing. 2 persons remain listed as missing. The desk is continuing to note that thread. It is now 1:15 p.m. Pacific. The first standing bulletin has been transmitted to this desk. It reads in full, standing condition unchanged. Standing condition unchanged. 3 words. That is the bulletin. Remain within the perimeter. Remain indoors. Remain away from west-facing and south-facing windows. Reduce non-essential use of electrical devices. Do not approach the coastline. Do not attempt to observe the feature directly. Continue to listen. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network. We are continuing to relay verified information. The perimeter broadcast is continuing. Emergency conditions remain ongoing. Remain within the perimeter. This is KQWL 1620 AM, Cold Harbor Emergency Relay Network.